I never used to believe in gut feelings. I'm an engineer, the kind of guy who trusts numbers, logic, hard data. But that Friday morning, first week of October, something made me change my flight and head home earlier than planned. It was our 26th wedding anniversary. I was supposed to stay 2 more days in Denver to close a deal with a client, but I remembered Linda saying she'd be home all weekend. No meetings, no events. We should have dinner, just the 2 of us, like old times, she'd said over the phone last week. So I booked an earlier flight. Didn't tell her. Wasn't trying to pull off some grand surprise or anything. I just wanted to be home, grab some sushi from her favorite place, and have dinner in the backyard. But as I turned onto our street, I saw a silver Range Rover in the driveway. One I didn't recognize. At first I figured maybe it was a neighbor's or someone parked in the wrong spot. Then I saw a pair of men's shoes by the door. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. I didn't slam the door open. I didn't yell her name. I turned on the voice recorder on my phone and kept it running in my jacket pocket. Laughter floated down from upstairs, 2 voices, and then sounds I never imagined I'd hear in my own house, in our bed. Each step up the stairs felt like walking with concrete blocks on my feet. The bedroom door was slightly open. I pushed it gently. It wasn't some blurry moment of confusion. It wasn't a hug or a misplaced kiss. It was betrayal, undeniable, raw, and laid bare. Linda looked up as I stood in the doorway. Her eyes widened like she couldn't believe I was there. Brian, her boss, froze, scrambling with the sheets and the clothes scattered on the floor. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why. I didn't punch the guy, even though every muscle in my body was begging me to. I just stood there, stared long enough for them to know that I knew. Then I took out my phone, stopped the recording, and walked out. That day, I call it D-Day. The day my marriage officially died. No shouting, no tears. Just a look, a recording, and a silence that weighed more than any scream ever could. My name's Eric. I'm 53. Linda and I have been together for 29 years, 26 of those as husband and wife. We met back in college. I was studying computer science. She was majoring in literature. Linda used to write in this little coffee shop near the dorms, and I'd go there all the time for the free Wi-Fi. We got married right after we turned 26, bought our first house 3 years later, and had our daughter when I was 31. I used to think I was one of the lucky ones. A calm, steady life. No chaos. No scandals. Linda was the gentle, organized type, kind, thoughtful, always keeping things together. She once turned down a full-time teaching offer so she could spend more time with our daughter. I worked in cybersecurity. Steady job, good income, no money issues. From the outside, we didn't look like some kind of storybook romance, but we were a solid team, or so I thought. Then, about a year ago, little things started feeling off. Linda suddenly had business trips, something that basically never existed in her job before. Her schedule got weird. Some days she'd leave earlier than usual, come home late, always saying she had meetings with donors or partner schools. She started caring more about her appearance, joined a Pilates class, changed her hair, started wearing perfume again. There were nights she'd sleep with her back to me, her phone face down on the nightstand. Some weekends she said she had to check out new partner schools, even though I knew that kind of thing never happened on a Sunday. I started mentally noting the dates, not to confront her, just to make sure I wasn't losing it. I didn't have proof, no texts, no anonymous calls, just a feeling. And feelings don't hold up in an argument. I really did hope I was wrong. I kept thinking, if I say something, if I bring this up, I might break something that's still holding together. I gently pushed the bedroom door open. That room, the one I had pictured in my head for years, used to mean intimacy, safety, trust. It was the one place I always came back to. And now, it was the crime scene of a betrayal I never imagined. Linda was underneath. Brian, her boss, was on top of her, fully naked, his hand resting on her hip. When the door opened, they were still breathing hard, still lost in it, completely unaware. But the soft creak of the hinge gave me away. Brian turned his head. Linda looked up. Her eyes met mine. and in the span of a few seconds, I saw all four emotions flash through her face: fear, guilt, confusion, and shame. She pulled the blanket over herself. Brian scrambled to sit up, frantically reaching for his underwear on the floor, his fingers shaking so much he couldn't even pull it on properly. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't pull out my phone like in some cheap drama. I just walked in, looked around, then moved toward the corner of the room, pulled the wooden chair into the middle of the doorway, and sat down, blocking the exit. Brian looked at me, panicked. I think I should go. I lifted my head and replied in a voice that was almost eerily calm. You will, but not yet. I held out my hand. Give me your phone. He hesitated, eyes darting toward Linda like he was hoping she'd somehow save him. But she said nothing. Just sat there, head down, curled into the blanket like she wanted to disappear. I kept my hand up, steady, unmoving. Eventually, Brian handed me his phone, a newer model iPhone. The lock screen showed a family photo: Brian, 2 kids, and a woman standing by the ocean. I held the phone up. Passcode? He stammered. It's not necessary. I repeated flatly. Passcode. After a moment, he mumbled, 0821. I typed it in. Phone unlocked. I went straight to the Messages app. There was a contact saved as my love. The messages popped up instantly. Sweet, gushy, painfully ironic now. I miss you every second. What class are you teaching today, babe? Did the kids go to bed yet? Send me a photo. Reading them didn't make me angry. It made my skin crawl. How can someone say things like that? And then hours later, end up in another man's bed? I scrolled down. Photos. He had an album labeled Family. I opened it. Pictures from camping trips. The kids hugging their dad. His wife Cynthia with her arm around him, smiling. I looked at Brian. This your family? He swallowed hard, nodded. So why would you destroy something like that? Silence. I went on. You thought she'd never find out? Thought you could keep it hidden? You send these sweet little messages and then crawl into bed with someone else's wife a few hours later. I'll help her find out. I pulled my phone from my jacket, scrolled to his contact. Cynthia Hale. Just as I was about to press call, Linda jumped from the bed, the blanket wrapped around her, and rushed over. Eric, please don't do this. I didn't look at her. Her voice cracked. Cynthia doesn't deserve this. Brian screwed up, yes, but don't ruin his family. The kids. Please. I turned my head and looked her in the eyes, for the first time since I walked into that room. Your own family is falling apart right in front of you, I said slowly. And you're worried about his? Linda said nothing. She just stood there, shaking slightly, clutching the blanket to her chest like it could somehow protect her from what was coming. I pressed the button. FaceTime call. 3 rings. Cynthia picked up. A woman I had never met appeared on the screen. Glasses, hair pulled back neatly, sitting in a living room with pale gray walls. Brian? She asked, squinting. Who is this? I turned the camera toward the 2 figures now trying to shield their faces. I tilted the phone slightly to get a clearer view of Linda, curled up at the edge of the bed, pale, barely covered, eyes wide. Brian stood off to the side, frozen, wearing nothing but his boxers, still slick with sweat. Cynthia stared at the screen. It took about 3 seconds. Then her eyes went wide. Brian? There was nothing left to explain. No one denied anything. No one said a word. Then the yelling started, Cynthia's voice bursting through the speaker, laced with fury and disgust. Get home. Now. If I see your face there one more minute, I'm changing the locks. I said nothing. I just slowly moved the phone, giving her a full view of the room, the bed, the clothes on the floor, the scene. Linda turned her face away. The call ended in silence. I handed the phone back to Brian. He didn't meet my eyes. Linda stayed quiet. I said one last thing before walking out. I'm not sure which of you is dumber. Her, for thinking I wouldn't notice. Or you, for leaving your damn shoes by the door. I didn't go back home for 3 weeks. That same afternoon, I drove straight up to Jackson's cabin, an old college friend who now works as a forest ranger in Asheville. The place had no Wi-Fi, barely any cell reception, just the sound of leaves rustling, wind scraping across the tin roof, and an old wood stove popping quietly every night. Jackson always left the spare key under the stone statue on the porch. Same spot it's been since I used to crash there in my single days. I didn't tell anyone, didn't respond to any messages, didn't check email. I just lived day by day like time had stopped mattering. On the second day, I threw up the first sip of coffee I managed to drink. By the 5th day, I realized I hadn't eaten a full meal at all. 1 can of instant noodles, half a loaf of stale bread from a hilltop grocery store. That was it. I wasn't hungry. My body didn't scream, but my mind wouldn't shut up. I sat for hours, staring out into the woods. Just sitting in that worn-out wooden chair, cup in hand, not drinking anything. Just existing. Each day blurred into the next, like they were being torn into shreds. Every time the phone buzzed, if it even got a bar of service, it felt like a mini heart attack. Linda texted constantly. The first message came that night. I'm sorry. The next day. Eric, please come home. We need to talk. Then, I lost my mind. I don't know what I was thinking. It was just once. Just once. I read exactly 3 texts. Then I turned off notifications and kept the phone on airplane mode most of the time. But even when I turned it back on, the numbers kept going up. 32, then 47, then 58 unread messages. 17 missed calls. A few voicemails. I didn't listen. Some emails too, one of them with just 3 words in the subject line. I was wrong. I didn't answer any of them. On the 10th day, I caught my reflection in the mirror and noticed my face looked sunken. I stepped on the scale. I dropped nearly 10 pounds. My eyes were hollow, beard patchy. I barely recognized myself. But one thing was clear. I was still fully conscious, fully aware, and I knew without a doubt that forgiveness wouldn't come as easily as Linda had hoped. That night, I turned my phone back on and typed a single line. No yelling, no accusations. We need to talk. It wasn't because I missed her, and it wasn't because I wanted to hear her side. I just needed confirmation, spoken aloud from her own mouth. No more dancing around it. No more, it was just once. I picked the old coffee shop near our house, the one we used to go to every Sunday. Linda always liked sitting by the window. I used to prefer the table near the wall, where fewer people walked by. But that day, I chose the window seat. I wanted her to sit exactly where everything used to feel familiar, so she could feel just how foreign it all had become. She was 10 minutes late. I wasn't surprised. She's always late when there's no reason left to rush. Her hair was tied up messily, dark circles under her eyes, no makeup. She wore the beige coat I bought her in Portland, the one she once called the first real coat I ever had. She sat down without ordering anything. Her hands twisted together on the table, eyes down. I didn't greet her, didn't ask how she was, didn't warm up the conversation. I just said, "Start talking. When did it begin?" She looked up but couldn't meet my eyes. Her voice was hoarse. "It was only once. I don't know what I was thinking." I let out a quiet laugh, not loud, just a small flicker of a smirk. Barely there, but sharp enough that she recoiled half an inch in her seat. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice steady. "You have 2 options. 1, tell the truth. 2, get divorce papers tomorrow. No bargaining, no stalling, no yelling, no anger, just a statement, colder than any threat." She froze, and then I saw it. Something inside her cracked, a twitch in her jaw, like something fragile had just shattered, and she knew it couldn't be pieced back together. Then she lowered her head. Her lips trembled. "Over 9 months," she whispered. I stayed silent. No notepad, no interruptions. I let her peel off the mask she'd been wearing for nearly a year. It started after a business trip to Charlotte. We had dinner with colleagues, drank too much. Brian made the first move. I thought it was just a one-time thing. But then, It happened again. I didn't stop her. I didn't care who made the first move. They both had choices. A few weeks later, it happened again. Then we started texting, then more. I looked at her. How many times? She inhaled shakily. 13 or 14. I don't know exactly. I leaned back. Where? A few times in hotels, during work trips, once at our house, when you were in Florida. Another time during the week. I got home early. Brian came over. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. I nodded slowly. Anywhere else? She swallowed hard. Once in his car, in the company garage. Once more, in a small meeting room, after hours. I propped my chin on my hand and looked out the window. Across the street was the old bookstore, where I bought her that poetry book for her 30th birthday. I couldn't even remember the title anymore. I turned back. Anyone else know? Friends? Co-workers? She shook her head. No, no one knows. We were careful. I let out a dry laugh, the first real one of the whole conversation. Yeah, I guess that's why you picked our bed. She looked down, said nothing. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, left a few bills on the table. Before walking out, I said, I'll send you a request. I want a timeline. Each time. Date, time, location, everything. If you don't send it, sign the papers. She nodded. Hands clenched tight. I walked out of that cafe without looking back. I don't even know what I felt in that moment. All I knew was, no, I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was absolutely done letting anyone keep things hidden from me ever again. I don't know if I still want to save this marriage. But I do know one thing for certain. If there's any chance left for it to survive, then everything moving forward has to be built on an entirely new foundation. Not love, not promises, but structure, boundaries, like a survival contract. So I wrote one. Literally. First, Linda had to rewrite the full timeline of her affair with Brian. Every date, every location, every lie she told to cover it up. The more detail, the better. No vague memories, no generalizations. Next was a complete list of sexual activities. No emotions, no excuses. Just a raw inventory of actions. No dodging, no minimizing. I didn't read it. I asked her to sign it, seal it, and submit it directly to my lawyer for safekeeping. It would only be opened if legal conflict ever arose in the future. Then came the next condition. Marriage counseling. Twice a week. Non-negotiable. No skipping because she was too tired or had work. She had to pay for all of it. I wouldn't contribute a dime. This wasn't a mutual investment. It was her reparation process. And finally, at the bottom of the contract, I wrote one final clause. Any broken promise results in immediate divorce. No discussion. No second chances. No bargaining. No crying. You break the deal, you walk. I didn't set these terms thinking they'd fix everything. I set them because I needed lines in the sand. Clear. Defined. Non-negotiable. Because without boundaries, what happened once would absolutely happen again. Linda didn't argue. She followed through. She sent the timeline a week later. It was longer than I expected. Included hotel rooms, parked cars, conference rooms in other states. The list of actions was blunt, clinical, and complete. She started therapy on schedule, twice a week. No complaints, no excuses. I still haven't forgiven her, but I've let the process play out. This isn't a marriage anymore. It's a survival contract. And whoever breaks it first leaves the table first. After a few weeks of therapy, I stopped looking at everything solely through the lens of marriage. I started treating it like a problem that needed solving, a system failure, not just an emotional implosion. It was no longer about forgiveness or whether to stay or go. It became, how do I end this with clarity? How do I make the people who dragged me into this mess face exactly what they've done? So I reached out to Cynthia. We met at a quiet cafe, our second time sitting across from each other since D-Day. We didn't talk much, but this time her eyes weren't full of pain. They were sharp, focused, steady. Cynthia wasn't just a sweet schoolteacher with a kind smile. Turns out she had a close friend who was a civil litigation attorney. And even before I reached out, she had already started quietly investigating Brian, ever since he began pulling away from her in bed, always claiming he was stuck at work. She handed me a thick folder that night. Inside it, things I never saw coming. Brian had done this before. Linda wasn't the first. There were at least 3 other women before her, all of them former subordinates. Different companies, same pattern. 2 were quietly transferred after ending things. 1 had her contract cut just 3 weeks after saying she might be pregnant. And another, this one backed by court records, had actually filed a sexual harassment complaint against Brian. The company settled internally, never went to trial. Cynthia wasn't doing this for revenge. She made that clear. She just wanted to make sure she wasn't blind anymore. And now, neither was I. We sat down with her lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who'd handled multiple workplace sexual harassment cases involving systemic abuse. She looked at everything and said bluntly, if Brian had a pattern of misconduct and his current employer tried to bury it, there was grounds for a class action case. Cynthia started reaching out to the other women. Not all of them responded. Some stayed silent, but 2 agreed to talk. 1 even still had a scanned copy of a formal complaint filed through HR, never followed up. We started building a file, emails, messages, internal notes, documentation that had quietly survived corporate cover-ups. And the deeper we dug, the more I realized. I wasn't just some isolated victim of infidelity. I had been pulled into a larger, uglier pattern. Linda was just a link in a chain of manipulation, coercion, and control, crafted by a man who had done this many times before. The picture was getting clearer, piece by piece. And Cynthia? She wasn't a stranger anymore. She was an ally. And for the first time in weeks, I could feel my anger crystallizing into something sharp, something with direction, something with purpose. There are moments in life that don't need careful planning. They just unfold, naturally, inevitably. And when they're over, you realize they were the final piece. The one that lets everything else finally shut. That's what it was like when Cynthia and I decided to meet Brian. Not to talk, not to listen, not to hear apologies or excuses, just to face him. One last time. We chose a hotel in downtown Raleigh, the very same one Linda had listed in her timeline, where at least 3 of those business trips had taken place. Same floor, same suite, same day of the week. Brian didn't know I'd be there. Cynthia was the one who messaged him, said she wanted to talk privately about divorce logistics. He showed up right on time. Blue dress shirt, hair slicked back, face blank aside from a flicker of confusion. The door opened. He stepped inside. I stood up from the chair in the corner of the room. He froze. 1 second later, my fist connected with his face. No yelling, no words. Just one punch, clean and hard, enough to drop him to the floor. As he was still dazed, trying to process what just happened, Cynthia stepped forward. No hesitation. She kicked him square in the face, a kick, I'm sure, that carried the weight of every woman he'd ever manipulated. He just laid there. No fight, no words. Blood started pooling from his nose. His shirt wrinkled, his shoes no longer on his feet. He looked small. The room was dead silent, like someone had shut off the sound from the entire world. A few people nearby had their phones out, recording. No one rushed to help. No one tried to break it up. We let him stay there for a while. Then we left, without a word. After that moment of raw closure, Cynthia sent the full file to her lawyer. Everything. Testimonies from women who'd been forced to withdraw complaints. Emails from HR promising internal resolutions. Undocumented payouts from previous employers labeled as personal support. A week later, the CEO of his company called him directly, told him to resign, immediately, no press release, no statement, just one quiet internal email, to avoid reputational harm. I didn't feel joy, didn't feel triumphant, but I was calm, because I knew this time he wouldn't bounce back. There wouldn't be another job, another woman, another reset. And for me, that was the only ending I could accept. Linda resigned at the end of that month, not because she was fired. She submitted her resignation voluntarily, along with a nearly 3-page handwritten letter addressed to the board, HR, and Cynthia. In it, she didn't try to defend herself. She didn't blame emotions, didn't blame alcohol, didn't blame stress. She called it what it was: weakness and cowardice. I didn't get involved with the letter. I read it once, nodded, and moved on. There were a few lines in there that, if nothing else, told me she wasn't trying to slip away quietly through some side door. She also agreed to take a polygraph, at my request, with a lawyer present. The results weren't surprising. Everything she confessed aligned with her previous timeline. No new names, no hidden details, just confirmation. I know a polygraph can't measure regret, but at least it told me one thing: she had stopped lying. Financially, Linda agreed to a settlement that didn't favor her. No delays, no haggling over percentages. She said she just wanted to end things with whatever dignity she had left. I haven't told our daughter. She's 21, in college out of state. She's like her mother, gentle, hopeful, and deeply rooted in believing good things about people. I don't know how to tell her. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I don't want to take away the last bit of faith she still has in this family. We talk every Sunday. I ask about classes, her friends, summer plans. She tells me about tough exams and how her new roommate just got a dog. I listen. I smile. I haven't said a single word about Linda, about any of it. Some things don't need to be said right away, especially when the person listening still sees home as their only safe place in the world. There'll be a time, but not yet. I used to think that if I was ever betrayed, I'd divorce immediately. I said it so many times to friends. If someone cheats on me, I'm gone. No second chances, no drama. It sounded decisive, clean. But nothing is ever that simple. When I found out about Linda, I didn't file for divorce right away. Not after a week, not after a month, not after 3. I hired a lawyer. I took back control. I burned the mattress and locked the doors. But I didn't sign the papers, not because I still loved her, and not because I was afraid of losing money. I just needed time. Time to figure out who I was after everything fell apart. I had lived with this woman for nearly 30 years. My routines, my meals, my vision of the future, they all had her silhouette somewhere in them. And even if she had done something I couldn't forgive, I couldn't erase that much of my life with a single signature. I didn't want to make decisions while I was still bleeding, so I moved out, put space between me and the smoke. I wanted to see clearly, to understand if what I was feeling was a wound, or just the scar of something that used to be called love. And maybe, deep down, some small part of me that once loved deeply wanted to give Linda the chance to leave this story with a little bit of grace, not to reconcile, just to end things with dignity. Some divorces are signed in rage. I don't want that. If I leave someday, it'll be because I'm finally at peace. Enough to walk away without carrying a single piece of the wreckage with me.